Now that we've gone through your project overview and how to get started, I'm going to show you how to write narrative poetry going through steps 1 through 5, and you can just watch and think about how you will go through these steps in just a moment. So I see that step 1 says select one snapshot experience from when you were 0 to 5 years old that you may be able to write about in a narrative poem, and I should use last night's homework brainstorm to help me. So if I look at my brainstorm, I see that I wrote down a lot of events, and one of them that I really like is making my first friend. I'm going to add some details about this event to remind myself as I'm starting to write. When I was 5 years old, I made my first friend. He was my neighbor, Mark Short. We met while we first interacted while playing in our backyards, separated by a fence. All right, so I have my event. Now I'm gonna go to the next step. Step 2. Gather sensory details. These are details that appeal to the 5 senses of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and seeing. So anything that is in one of those categories would be a sensory detail. And I want to pick sensory details about that experience. The best way I found to do this is through a clustering idea. And so I've made a cluster here, and I've taken a picture for you because it's difficult to type this out. I put the topic in the middle, meeting my first friend, and around the outside I have details related to that event. The stars indicate details that have the most sensory detail in them. So a good sensory detail is this nervous butterfly feeling. Another one is soft voices, because I can imagine hearing that. I also have tall brown splintery fence that was separating me and Mark as we first interacted. I remember tapping on the fence to see if someone was there. I remember the smell of fresh cut grass. I also remember that it was a hot summer day and I was playing outside. And some other details that aren't as sensory but definitely appeal to emotions is the strength and confidence of my mother, because my mother was the one who finally opened the gate and let us meet each other. And I also remember feeling excited, and I probably could think of a way to describe that feeling using sensory details, but for the moment I just put excited. Notice though that most of my bubbles contain sensory details, and that's why I put a star next to those. Okay, now moving on to step 3. For step 3, I have to choose a character or characters for my poem. I have to think about what the characters are like, who will be the speaker of the poem, and then just like when I'm writing a short story, I want to determine the conflict. What are the inner, inside the main character, and outer, that's outside of the main character, conflicts in the event that I have chosen, and how is the conflict resolved? So I'm going to brainstorm here. I have an idea that I want to be the first person narrator of this, so me, first person narrator. So I'm going to be the speaker. It says to circle the character will be the speaker. I'm going to underline it because I am working from a computer. And so I'm going to be the speaker. Some details about myself: 5 years old, like adventure, love playing outside, a little awkward. I was a awkward little kid. Okay, I also have the friend that I meet. His name is Mark, and thinking about him at that time, he was the friend I met, lived next door to me, was taller than me. Oh, and I was tall for age, so if he was taller than me, that was kind of important. And he was friendly. That's why we became friends. Also, my mom is featured in this poem, is going to be featured in this poem very briefly. She opens the fence the gate so I can meet Mark. And thinking about her character, she really was a symbol and who I thought was strong and confident. Also, she was an authority. So that's how I looked at my mom at that time. I still look at her as very strong and confident. So I have my characters and some descriptions. I picked myself as the speaker. Now I need to think about conflicts and resolutions. One of the conflicts that I had as an internal conflict was feeling nervous. I'm going to put internal or inner conflict, and it was feeling nervous about meeting someone new. So that's an inner conflict. An external conflict, and you guys probably already know what this one is going to be. The fence was a barrier between us, right? We couldn't meet until we bridged that fence. So that's actually like the physical conflict that is external. Now I'm moving on to step 4, where I'm going to consider a plot for my poem, because narrative poetry always has a plot. So I'm going to have a rising action, a climax, and a falling action. And you don't always have to go in order, because like I know my climax is going to be the moment I start talking to Mark through the fence, because that's the moment that we meet. I feel nervous, excited. There's a lot of things going on there. So that's definitely the climactic moment. So I have that already. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to go in order. Kind of think about it how it comes to you. But now, so I have the climax. I'm going to go to rising action. This is really playing outside, near the fence. I was actually digging for worms. I'm going to put worms here so I remember that. And then hearing a soft voice through the fence is important because that's the initiating event. And from there, we move to the climax. And finally, the falling action would be meeting Mark in person because my mom opens the gate and lets him through. So that's when we actually become friends. That's the resolution. Oh, that brings me back up here. I didn't have resolutions for my conflicts. I need to make sure that I also have resolutions. So the resolution for this conflict of feeling nervous about meeting someone new was meeting them and finding out that they are friendly, right? If you're nervous to meet someone new, but then you meet them and they're friendly, you're not nervous about meeting new people anymore. It really helps. So that was the resolution there. And then the resolution for the fence being a barrier was what I put down in my plot map, that my mom opened the gate. Mom opened gate. So the fence is no longer a barrier. So yes, sometimes it's hard to remember things as you're going through the steps, but then always go back. It's so important to go back and to review what you've done and think about what you might be missing. All right, so I've done everything I need to do on this page, and I'm going to move to step 5, which is the exciting step. Craft the lines of your poem, and it's okay if it doesn't come together in the first draft. Narrative poetry always takes a couple of drafts to get in the spirit of the poem, and remember to include a wonderful title that adds to the meaning of your poem. Sometimes you don't know the title till the end. Sometimes you have a title and you want to change it. I'm going to call my poem Meeting My First Friend, and I always want to capitalize the first letter of the main words in a title. So that's my title. I might change it, but I think I like that for now. I'm going to go through the process of writing the first stanza and kind of think aloud through it, and then my whole poem will appear, and you can review it together, and then I'll let you guys get started on writing your poems because I don't want to take up all of your writing time today. So here's how I went about starting. I just thought, okay, I'm going to be the first person narrator. That's what I've decided. And it feels natural to talk to the friend that I met about this memory, sort of like as if I were writing them a letter about the story. So I'm going to write, I remember first meeting you. And I chose you, and the you here is Mark. I'm writing as if I'm telling him this memory. I like that approach. On a hot summer day. So I'm using some of those sensory details from my web. The freshly cut grass smell in my backyard, filling my nostrils and heart with joy. I really love the smell of fresh cut grass. It makes me think about summer, and I think that I started loving that smell when I was younger and I played outside a lot. And you know what? I was just talking about summer, and this makes me think of summer, and I think I need to say it was summer to help establish the setting. So right now, I know that it's backyard, it's summer, I have the time and the place. I also introduce the way I'm going to approach this. I'm going to be talking to the friend that I met, and I'm using a lot of those details that I had in my web up here. Hot summer day, grass. So I will always go back here as I'm working to see if I'm missing any details or if I need inspiration. And magically, my poem appears. I wrote the rest of it and just put it on the screen for you so that I don't go through every stanza talking about every single decision I make as I go. Although I do want to talk about some of the decisions I made outside of the first stanza here. So in the second stanza, looking for adventure, I played close to the tall, brown, splintery fence, digging up earthworms, making their homes by the fence posts where the ground was soft and damp. The dirt on my hands sticking like icing. Dirt is icing to worms, my 5-year-old mind thought. They eat it. So in this stanza, I used a poetic device. I used a simile, talking about the dirt being like icing. And I also kind of characterize myself as a 5-year-old, giving myself a thought that 5-year-olds would probably have. I don't remember exactly if I had this thought, but it would make sense that I would think this way, thinking about what dirt is to worms, because I was fascinated by things that crawled around. I loved playing with bugs and worms. So then read the rest of my poem and think about what questions you have about some of the style decisions that I made.